All right, we're going for take two, 18 minutes later, of Chingona Fest Live for the first live stream, which will hopefully eventually, sometime before I'm 90, turn into the first podcast, which I will not be converting myself because obviously I have a slight learning curve when it comes to the technical issues. Um, so right now I am waiting for Ana Romero and Heidi Zalamar to join me if they can find me. And I'll talk to the three people here. And hopefully next week I'll be slightly less stupid. So let's see here.
Hi, Pauline.
Hi.
Hi.
This is my favorite Canadian fish with the identity crisis.
Hi.
I love you.
Oh, I love you too. Oh, I make no apologies for my idiot birds in the background. They natter constantly.
Awesome.
Sorry, I haven't got the camera on because I look like crap today. It's like kind of a bad hair month.
Man, is the new mom gonna be the one with the messy hair?
Hi. I have bad hair decades.
I don't know. Maybe I will pop it on for just a second.
Please do, then I won't feel so bad by myself.
Okay, but I won't promise you.
I put lipstick on at 10 o'clock at night just, because I'm, like, that kind of special.
Yeah, well, I like need to go dunk myself in a vat or something. I warn you, I've got my kid here who's like just determined to have me step on Legos right about now. It's summer vacation, so she can stay up late. I don't care, but. Okay.
My son is here trying to say hello. Can he say hi real quick?
Sure.
There. Hello. See, I look like crap. I look like crap right now.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, bonjour. Salut. Salut.
How are you?
Hi.
I got people. I cannot believe, I don't even know what was going on the first time I tried doing this. There was an insane amount of feedback, and I kept on referring to it as back feed, and, because, I'm special like that. And I'm waiting for Ani Romero to join us, and also Vanessa Vasquez from East Coast High is going to be popping in. And even if we only have, us here right now, the plan is that we'll be adding, turning this into a podcast. So each episode the following week will become a podcast for Chingona Fest. Okay, I'm ringing.
Okay.
Don't know what the hell to do.
So next time I will have makeup on, yes?
Go for it. Yes.
Just not today. I look like a human being with makeup on. I'm actually going to switch over to speaker and the machine microphone. I'm going to take the headset off because right now I feel like a droid.
Okay. Yeah. I'm obviously impressing the potential sponsors here. So hi, I'm the local village idiot. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get Annie on here. And I followed the directions. I found this awesome little tutorial. Easiest way to podcast, I think, is what I searched. And I found one that was like, oh, look, you just got to follow these 5 easy steps so you can, do a Google Plus Hangout, live stream and then convert this bad boy over to a podcast. And then you've got, SEO and, all the audiences combined and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, awesome. I'll do the first part. I'll let my husband convert podcast. And the first time, it was like R2D2 was stuck on repeat because you couldn't hear anything. So let me see. Let me see here. So the idea is for Chingona Fest, which has been a Twitter party on Wednesdays, to turn into a slightly better organized weekly gathering. That the plan is the following week. This episode would be a podcast next week, airing next week, and we would be getting together for a different topic and whatever we want to discuss, plus hopefully more people. And then the following week, that one will air as a podcast. That's the plan. And I'm just gonna say that's the plan because obviously I'm not all together on there, So give me a second here so I can see where she's at. So while we're waiting, Chingona Fest is a community that started by accident, which is how most things I'm involved with actually start. I was having a bad day with my kid, or I should say my kid was having a bad day, and I happened to be present. And we were at a field trip, and little girl did not want to stay because she was having some girls are being mean issues. And I'd driven an hour and a half in the caravan following on my own. She insisted on riding in someone else's vehicle. And when we got there, she was, I want to go home. Kids are being mean. I want to go home. I want to go home. And I said, you know what, sweetheart? No. I drove an hour and a half. We're staying. Suck it up, princess. And that conversation turned into a column for Latina Magazine. I write the Dímelo column, Dímelo Advice, and turned into a hashtag, and lo and behold, we eventually somehow made it here, which I'm not quite sure where here is just now, but I'm not the only one here, so I think maybe I'm doing something right. Let me try sending an invite here real quick to Vanessa and to Anne, and then we can hopefully get a little bit of convo going regarding the topic at hand, which is actually the reason that I specifically requested for Heidi and Anna to take part in the conversation, because Heidi's a licensed mental health therapist, bilingual, living in New York, and Anne is, well, let me see. She's actually very involved on the government side, on the lobbying side for passing suicide prevention and educational type laws. She's got a very, very, very impressive resume. And I met her and worked with her last year at Latism on a mental health panel regarding Latinos and mental health in the community. Specifically, the fact that there isn't much discussion on it publicly because we, as a culture, typically like to sweep the nasty shit under the rug. Go ahead and talk about the new car, the new job, the new boyfriend, but by all means, don't tell anybody that you're feeling depressed or that you're suicidal or that you've attempted suicide or that you have an eating disorder or that, hell, don't tell anybody you're getting a divorce or getting married pregnant because, well, that looks bad for everybody, not just you. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my family. I love my culture. I love being Mexican. I love being Latina. But there are quite a few reasons that Latina, the Chingona Fest, I think, is resonating with people. And one of those, I believe, is the fact that, where we are now, we're in a different spot than where our moms and our dads were. We want to have a voice. We want to be heard. We want to reduce all the stigma and we want to basically kind of respectfully assert ourselves as independent women who are raising the next generation to have a voice, to appreciate the one that they have, and to understand that they do not need to put the happiness of the village ahead of their own. I see Anne. Hi. And can you hear me, Anne?
I can.
Cool, cool, cool. All right. So, Chingona Fest, or my English subtitle, Bitch Redefined, is basically redefining ourselves, redefining our culture, redefining where we are and who we are. And I tell people who look at me like I'm crazy when I say Chingona Fest, because Chingona is a bad word in Spanish, particularly Mexican Spanish. And the way I look at it, if you can take Chingona, I'm sorry, if you can take bitch as a compliment, which I do, then you're going to be okay with the word Chingona. If not, then pretend you don't hear the word if you like what the hashtag stands for. And I don't know, call it Chinela Fest. Could you say Chinela when you were little? I could say Chinela. That was like the darn it version of damn it, but you know. But so tonight we're talking about. I wanted to talk about mental health and stigma as it relates to the Latino community, because as Anne remembers, at the autism panel last year, and I'm sure as Heidi knows, being in the mental health profession dealing with Latino families, it's kind of like trying to find a needle in a haystack when it comes to getting the whole family on the same page to discuss plans and options and addressing issues when there are issues. Sometimes it's a language barrier, sometimes it's a generational gap on comfort level, because we are raised not to air the dirty laundry. But with Robin Williams having committed suicide earlier this week, and so many people all over the board are having really bad weeks with the media coverage. I grew up watching him. I had Mork and Mindy suspenders as a kid. Didn't watch a lot of American TV, but Mork and Mindy was one of them. And I know that it's the same for a lot of us. And so many people are talking about it. So many people are so upset by it. And I couldn't help but wonder, with the threat, the very real danger of suicide contagion, and people being triggered this week. How many people, how many Latinos, how many Latinas can actually go to their families, and the people who are there for them and love them as support, or reach out as for asking for help if they're having a bad time. So, Anna, tell me a little bit about you first, so that people during the podcast and everything can have an idea, and then Heidi, you do the same.
Hi everyone, I'm Ana Romero, and I am coming from New Mexico. I'm treatment certified in suicide prevention. I've been working in this field for about 12 years now, but I focus a lot more on the policy aspects of it. So I've helped to write state legislation and also.
Ana, I think your audio's off a little bit.
Oh, can you hear me at all?
That's better.
Okay, I think that worked. But I've been working in suicide prevention for about 12 years now. I just transferred back to my home state of New Mexico from Washington, D.C., where I was working for a member of Congress on mental health policy. But it's such an important topic to talk about, and unfortunately, it's tragic cases like what happened recently that kind of bring up this topic, but it's something that those of us who work in the mental health field talk about on a daily basis. So it's really about creating the dialogue and ensuring that we don't forget these people and these lives, that we continue to keep the discussion on the agenda, because it's something that we have to share with others, that it's okay to ask for help, that you shouldn't feel embarrassed or ashamed. And it's really about changing the way that society views behavioral health and also discusses it and thinks about it. So thank you so much for having me. This is my first Google chat. I don't even know if I'm doing it right. But
you know what? I wasn't doing it right for the first 18 minutes, so you totally get a pass. Because I arranged this clusterfuck. FYI, I do swear. If you've ever read my blog, Aspiring Mama, I do drop F-bombs here and there, not gratuitously. I refer to swear words as seasoning for my sentences. I just use them when it needs to be there, I think, for emphasis. And I plan on running the live stream slash podcast the same way I write. So if bad words offend you, um, I'm sorry, because I use them. Um, all right, so now, like as you were saying, on it with the discussion being high on everybody's radar right now, um, the one thing that we're both aware of, and you too, Heidi, and I'll give you just in just a second. I'll get to you too. Is that after the fascination and the media with the I say fascination in a grim kind of way because I used to be a reporter, but right now it's new and everybody's talking about it and all the headlines are there and there's all the sensationalism and everybody's talking about it. You've got some good, some bad, but you've got the conversation there because it was a celebrity, and in this instance, it was a very well respected and loved celebrity. So, but it's been brought up multiple times, and I want to mention Christy comes from Motherhood Unadorned. She's a suicide prevention advocate, and I happened to see her mention in on a Facebook commenting on the topic that she wants to see, and I think we need to see the conversation continue because even though it's we're sorry for Robin Williams' family and know that they're going through an immense amount of pain right now, and I'm so horribly saddened about his death myself, and I know everybody else is. But every 14 minutes, someone dies by suicide, and the statistics for Latinos are not that are actually pretty scary. I did some research this afternoon, and Heidi, I know you did some, so tell me what you can piggyback off of what I've got going on here, and then tell us about yourself too a little bit. But according to what I found, Latinos are more likely to experience a major depressive episode, with about 45% of women and 19% of males affected. This is from the an AMI Multicultural Action Center. The Commonwealth Fund survey revealed that surveyed Latinos and Asian American girls exhibited more depressive symptoms than their African American or Caucasian counterparts. And from a 1997 study, the rate of attempted suicide among Latino high school girls is about 1.5 times higher than that of their counterparts. Now, I'm going to say words that I haven't spoken publicly on any social media outlet. And I am emphasizing the word spoken because I'm a writer. No one told me, I've been told not to say stuff. I was never told not to write it. But I also myself tried. I had a bad time in college. I'm ADHD severely, and there's depression and anxiety that goes in there. So I have what can be confused as bipolar swings, but they're on a much smaller scale. And I was undiagnosed at the time. I took a whole bottle of something, pills. I don't even know what it was, because I wanted to sleep for a really long time. And then I realized sleep is different than dying. So I called my boyfriend at the time, who got me to the hospital, and I drank charcoal. And then I lied and said no, I didn't feel like hurting myself again because I wanted to go home. And the only conversation I had with my father, because he was going to see the insurance bill, was him asking if I was going to try it again. And I said no. He said okay. And the discussion never brought up again. Now, mind you, my dad was a good guy. But that's how it went. And I think that's how it goes with a lot of people. So Heidi, talk to us. What happened? People?
I think your mics are muted.
My mic deleted?
Sorry.
There you go.
What happened?
All learning here.
Who did what
Okay.
now?
So my name is Heidi Delmar, and I am a licensed bilingual mental health counselor. I've been a mental health counselor. I unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We're good. Okay. I'm a licensed bilingual mental health counselor here in New York City, and I work in East Harlem with low-income families, most of them undocumented immigrants. And I work with kids and teens ages 3 to 17. Bilingual mental health counselor. And I've been working with kids since I was about 18 years old. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Very good. Okay. I'm a licensed bilingual mental health counselor here in New York City. I work in East Harlem with low-income families, most of them undocumented immigrants, and I work. Ooh. Okay.
You guys hear? What the hell happened? We were going so good. Oh my God, what happened? Everybody here?
Oh man.
Are you there? Everybody here?
I'm still here.
I see you. Okay. I accidentally had two windows open.
Okay. Can you guys see me at least?
I can hear you. I can hear you. For anybody watching or listening, after the fact, welcome to the party. Okay. Go ahead, Heidi. Heidi?
Okay, so I've been working with kids since I was a kid, since I was 13 years old, and the simple reason for that, hello?
Yeah, we're here, keep going.
Okay. Okay. So the reason that I work with kids is because when I was a kid, I had a counselor intervene and just be a part of my life. And it was part of an after-school program that I was in from the time I was 11. I felt I'm a very shy kid in a house where my dad was an alcoholic, my mom was codependent, and I had siblings, but it was a chaotic home. Needless to say, this after-school program became my second home. And when I met this counselor, she was a young woman from Fordham University, and she took the time to just hang out with me and show me how special I was, and I loved that feeling. And over the course of my teen years, I actually spent 10 years straight in that program. I was a summer program coordinator. I went up in the ranks. It's a family-centered, family-structured type of after-school program where there are symbolic families, mothers and fathers, daughters and sons, aunts and uncles, grandparents. And it was great, and I really thrived being in that program, and it gave me a place to escape when I needed to escape my home life. Fast forward till I was 22 years old, I got pregnant with my first son, who's 13 now, and a year and a half later, I lost my mom. And because I had my son, I wanted to provide him with a role model. And because I lost my mom, I wanted to fulfill my dreams because she didn't get to do those things. So I wanted to make sure to live life to the fullest and follow my heart. And I did, and I became a counselor. And where I work now is a really great place. We do a lot of work around just helping families. And it's not just about providing mental health services. I am part of a very tiny clinic within a daycare program at the Association to Benefit Children, and it's an organization that has 3 buildings, and they provide daycare services, preventive services, after-school services, mental health, family assistance, Saturday programming. Really, it's a place where families can just come and be connected to so many different things. But a lot of the kids that I see and a lot of the families I see, there are a lot of mental health issues. And it's always because of something that happens with the child that brings them into our services. However, we also notice that the parents have their own significant mental health issues. And most of the families that we work with are Latino, low-income, immigrant, non-English speaking families. And we deal with a lot of kids who are depressed, anxious. Some of them are very oppositional. Some of them, it's a variety of mental health services, mental health diagnoses that we deal with, but many of them are depressed and or anxious. And at the same time, the parents can be depressed and or anxious. So we tend to work with the entire family, centered around the child, but also I try to help the parents deal with their own issues and encourage them to get services for themselves, since we can't provide that on site. But I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy that Pauline invited me to do this this chat and to provide some insight into how the Latino community is affected by mental illness. So thank you, Pauline.
Well, you know, I wasn't going to do this one without professionals who are in the field. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on my blog, and I sure as hell am not going to play one with a camera in my face because I suck at acting. And I couldn't set this shit up, so there's no way I was going to be given advice. I can share my personal experience, but I'm not going to. I don't like being sued, so I'm going to avoid that. You know, with Anna and her experience and Heidi, you can be my Dr. Phil, except, you know, you're licensed and not annoying. There goes my shot at being on this show. But I wanted to make sure that we talked about this and it was relevant in the sense that not necessarily ambulance chasing relevancy, which I know a lot of media outlets are doing right now, and it's kind of disgusting. And it's really disgusting. I'm so mad about it, a lot that's happening right now with my college. Everything that people are supposed to not be doing right now is what I learned not to do in journalism 101. But it's happening, and people are being triggered, and there's discussions happening, and I see all these people reaching out for help and, you know, checking on each other on Facebook and on Twitter, and because, you know, we've been reading each other's blogs and following each other online and social media for long enough that, you know, we kind of have a sense of, even for those of us who've never met each other in person, we kind of have a sense for the voice and the tone of the social media shares coming from our friends, how often they post, when they post, what they usually post. Is there something wrong because they're not posting right now? Because I know her history, I know his history. So there's a lot of people checking on each other, and that's good. But, you know, I was kind of like trying to figure out, I was trying to imagine, you know, being 18, and instead of it, you know, being Selena Quintanilla who died, to, you know, it being, you know, this back then. You know, I'm 18. The social media does exist, but, you know, how do I communicate? You know, if this is triggering me, How do I communicate and who do I talk to? How many Latino teens who may not have ever, seen Mork and Mindy, but have probably seen Dead Poet Society because of an English class, or seen Hook because, it's on like Bravo TV and stuff all the time, or Jumanji, right? How many people, how many teenagers and young adults are having issues now that are being highlighted, aggravated, or triggered by the news feeds now and the headlines now, and how many of them can actually tell people that they're upset, that they're depressed, that they're being triggered, that they're having a tough week, that they need help, that they, want. Can you just be an extra little bit of support for me this time? Right around now, because we're taught not to talk about stuff. And that's it's I hate that part where Mexican weddings, you've got the bride going down the aisle and everybody whispering the how pregnant is she game, and nobody's gonna go up. We all know that everybody else knows, but nobody's gonna say it out loud because that would just be rude. And then 4 months later when the baby's born and everybody oohs and ahs over the miracle of 6-month-old looking babiness because baby wasn't a preemie. Wow, so grateful. Dios te bendiga, baby came out healthy. Yeah, right. And everybody showed up to the hospital with 6-month-old clothes instead of preemie clothes. But no one's gonna say that premarital sex is a thing, which is bullshit. And so I mean, that's just the typical. That's just that's premarital sex and pregnancy. That's normal now. It's not 1920. But now the stigma for mental health, it's not just a Latino thing. We know that, but I think it's exaggerate. Not. I think it's harder in a sense because we're not just looking at like society in general, because usually society in general can go fuck themselves. I don't care what other people think. If I don't know you, and you don't like what I'm saying, change the channel. If I know you and you don't like what I'm saying, I'm not going to have a seat at the table for Sunday dinner with the Tias and the Tios and everybody, because they're all going to be upset that I talk too much or I say something that is bringing disrespect and shame to the entire family. And it's like there's this weight. Don't you guys and Heidi, that this weight of responsibility is placed on, I think, even the youngest of Latino American kids and Latinos growing up in the United States, where you know at a very early age that if you're having a bad day and you talk about it, if you're depressed, if you wake up crying and you don't know why, and you talk about it, you're not just telling people that you're having a bad day and that you don't know why you're sad, but you're telling people that your parents did something wrong. Your parents aren't raising you right, or your parents are horrible parents, and that reflects, and then that reflects out. So anything that you are putting out there isn't just isn't taken at face value for what you're feeling. It's put on us that what we're feeling reflects on everybody else, and that puts such a heavy burden on so many of us growing up thinking we're supposed to internalize. What do you think, Anya?
Oh, can you hear me?
It's very quiet.
Okay. Is this better?
A little bit more.
Okay. Sorry. Whole new thing. But I think that when we're talking about, we have to remember that mental illness is an illness of the brain, just as any other illness. And so studies have been able to show that even in children as young as 3 years old, they can start to detect the onset of a mental illness such as schizophrenia or bipolar. So I think that it's important for us to focus on prevention, early intervention, because as I often tell people, if no one taught you how to tie your shoe, how would you know how to tie your shoe? If no one taught you how to say your ABCs or your numbers, it's the same kind of concept that we need to start embracing with our young people today, with children, because it creates healthy habits that will lead on, that they will take with them as they continue to grow. And the other thing too, I was thinking about actually, and preparing for today's Google chat, was really the importance of teaching kids about the importance of mental fitness, just the same as it says. I know you do a lot of body image, but it's also just as equally important, if not, for me, I feel that it's more important to be mentally fit, because your mind is something that controls every aspect of your body, the way that you think, the way that you feel. And so I think that as we're incorporating mental fitness into working with our children, we also have to do a better job at finding ways to inspire young children since a young age, so they can create their passions and their hopes and their dreams, and they don't feel like they have to be molded into what society thinks that they should be. And I think that there's a lot of positive outlets that are out there, but a lot of times we as humans just feel like we have to kind of fit within the parameters of what society has told us. And when it comes to mental illness, as you were saying, there's such a stigma. We're fighting thousands of years. We have to remember that the stigma for mental illness goes back to Greek times. You have the suicide of Socrates. You have a lot of these different stigmas that relate to it, cultural, where you have in some Native American cultures, you were not even allowed to speak the person's name. You have movies such as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that depict to people what does mental illness look like. And then I think when you look at tragedies with Robin Williams, I think what everyone is really kind of dumbfounded about is that people who are happy all the time, people who are perfect, people who bring so much joy, people who are loved by so many and who know that they are loved by so many, don't just take their lives. And so I think that this really has shed light on the issue that mental illness is an invisible illness, and we never know what somebody is going through. And so this is why knowing the warning signs, knowing where to go, knowing who to talk to. But again, it's about changing the way that society views and addresses this illness. We have a long way to go, but discussions like this are definitely taking the step in the right direction. So that way young people can start to create those healthy habits to ask for help. It creates the dialogue for parents to not be afraid to ask their child, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Do you know of anyone who's hurting themselves? And also, just to kind of wrap it up on my end, is really about doing a better job nationwide and ensuring that federally we're funding mental health at a national level, that we're not cutting these mental health programs, that people actually have a place to go if they need to, that they have access to, whether it's talk therapy or through medication, but that people have a choice to be healthy, because it's definitely a right, and we have to do better, and it really starts with prevention, early intervention.
Yeah, and I've gotten pushback from people that I know personally on talking about, my daughter is 7 now, and she's been in talk therapy off and on a little bit. She's got, some anxiety issues, and what the therapist referred to as a stress tolerance disorder. We all have our own threshold for how much change we can take before we completely crack. And her topping point was basically non-existent. We moved a lot. This is, I think that, last time I counted, I think this was the 6th house in 3rd state we've lived in, and she's 7. So, and when we moved to Maine from Arizona, that was 4 years of her life that, so her earliest memories, that we left her foundation. So, I mean, I got that. I understood that. She was having really bad night terrors. We were having to physically restrain her because at night, because she was throwing herself around so much on the bed that we thought she was going to hurt herself, and like if she hit the floor. And that was all from not wanting to talk during the day. I internalized. Apple tree. She didn't fall very far. So does she. And so we got her into talk therapy, and lo and behold, like within a week or two, she was sleeping better at night, and she was better at just expressing herself. Not that she's very very outspoken, but if I ask her, are you sad? How are you feeling? What's going on? It was getting better responses. But one thing that I made sure to do, and my husband's been right on with supporting it, is explaining to her that we call the therapist when we go. She's not. We have to find another one. But when we go, we call a therapist her feelings doctor, because if you break your foot, and I had this conversation with her, break your foot, where do you go? A foot doctor to get a cast. Okay. You have a stomach ache, where do you go? The doctor. I'm like, okay, well, do you ask for medicine for your ankle? No, my stomach hurts. Ask for medicine for my stomach. Okay. And I went through various body parts. This doctor for that doctor for this. Do you go to the ear doctor to get your eyes checked? No, that's silly, Mama. Okay, well, what happens when you have feelings that you can't talk about, or you're not sure even what the feelings are, but something isn't feeling right, and you can't sleep at night, or you're getting upset, or you're crying about things, or you're always mad and you don't know why? Who do you go to? Do you go to the eye doctor? No, you go to a feelings doctor, she says. Exactly. So, and I don't shy away from mentioning it in public, because the basis for stigma regarding going to see your therapist. She's in therapy. That starts at home, or at least in your immediate circle. And I love my family, so I do not mean this personally in any way. If by chance somebody figures out what the internet is this week, but I pent up a lot of shit, because I was told and taught, just as everybody else was, you don't air your dirty laundry, and that includes eating disorders, overdosing on pills, pregnant brides at weddings, all of that. Living with your boyfriend in sin. You don't talk about any of that stuff, because it reflects on everyone, not just you, and it's a stigma, right? Well, I internalized a bunch of that, and it took a very long time to get from me not talking and internalizing the hell out of every living thing, to the point where I could say, fuck it, I gotta write. I'm having a bad day, I'm gonna write about this. And I've been writing my blog for 6 years now, I think. And it took that long to get to the point where I could be like, yeah, let's talk. Let's do this with words, like the spoken kind. Because to me, they're two completely different things. I can write without worrying about what people say, including those that I'm related to, or who might see what I'm writing as a personal attack, what it's not meant to be. What we share, in social media and our blogs and our essays, etc., is typically, how we are relating to the rest of the world, and we're not, pointing fingers, but we have family members and friends, and people who've grown up with us who might be going, why are you talking about that? What are your parents gonna say? What doesn't that make your mom okay with that? What about your abuelo? It reflects on everybody. Heidi, what do you think when it comes to how we're raised And do you think that plays a part in how many of us are trying to, like, I guess, keep the culture alive and the traditions alive, but maybe like go in completely opposite direction when it comes to relating to mental health with our kids? I mean, you've got a unique situation. Obviously, you're a mental health therapist, so I would imagine that your son has a much more open and encouraging situation when it comes to understanding all of that. Heidi, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think there's a
Okay.
delay.
So it's interesting that you say that because yes, I am a mental health counselor, and I'm also a parent. I have 2 kids now. One is a baby; he's brand spanking new. But my older son has ADHD, and thank you. And I want to say that I'm more understanding. I try my best to be, but there are times when I forget my mind. I forget that I am a therapist. I'm not a therapist. So I can definitely relate to the past that work with when I'm dealing with certain things. When it comes to my son's behavior, basic things like chores. When he doesn't want to listen to me, when he wants to do his own thing. He's a teenager now, so he wants to make his own decisions, and sometimes I have a really hard time with that. But like you said, I try to be understanding. But something that Anne was talking about before, about kids seeking help and giving them outlets, I think that's wonderful. But one of the things that I do in my work is really educate parents on how they can get their kids to give them the behavior that they want, how they can get their kids to a place where they can be happy. And I do focus on letting them know that this issue that their kid has is not the kid's issue, it's a family issue. And I think that's something that's really important to educate people on, that mental illness, like we talked about Robin Williams earlier, it wasn't his issue alone. It was an entire family. The entire family system affects one person. If you want to look at me, I grew up, like I said, I was an alcoholic. I had an older brother, I had a younger brother. My older brother left home at 18 to go to the military. My younger brother and I witnessed a lot of issues between my parents, a lot around my dad's alcoholism and different things, my parents' relationship. And all of that I know affected me. It made me a very anxious kid. I think I was born anxious, it just made it worse. And I think that a lot of family issues really affect the child's mental health. Again, Anne talked about young children. In our clinic, we screen children as young as whatever. We have an early screening program, an early recognition program, where we have somebody that goes out to the community, to doctors' offices, to daycares, to screen children for mental health issues. And if the child's information comes back positive for some kind of a problem, the parent is invited to seek mental health services with us. So then it becomes a family issue, and even the youngest child is affected by their home life, by a lot of our families are immigrant families, as I mentioned. Most of the families I work with are Mexican and Dominican. As of 2010, 63% of all of the Latinos in the United States are Mexican.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Some another piece of information I found was that 33% of Latinos do not have insurance. And beyond that, the idea of seeking help is something that I find, especially with immigrant families, is impossible. They are taught to be insulated and isolated. The family is the only thing that you need, and that's something my parents taught me, especially my father, who was from Ecuador. He told me when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, money is your only friend, and the belt is your boyfriend. And that just goes to show that I wasn't allowed to say anything about my life, about about what my home life was like, and I never did. I didn't share it until I was picked for a group of girls whose families, somebody in the family was an addict or an alcoholic, and that was when I was in high school. So if you can imagine, I never talked about it till I was 14 years old, about my home life. It just really speaks to how this happens, how families really guard themselves. I find that immigrant families are more guarded because of so that's another thing that I see a lot of. And another thing that I do focus on is looking at the entire picture of the family, the socioeconomic status of the family. What is it that they're dealing with? Many of the families I deal with are single-parent homes. They're single mothers just trying to raise their children and to help them achieve a better life than they had. And I think that when we talk about mental health in the Latino community, it's really about teaching parents not only to take care of their children's mental health, but also to take care of their own mental health.
Yeah, and that I think is a turnaround, for you, like you said, and for me, I wasn't about my goal, because I know every parent fucks something up. My goal is that when my child ends up, on a therapist's couch, of her own accord, because she wants to straighten out something or work through issues on her own, that she's in college, she's in her own house, she's married, whatever, and she decides she needs mental help and talk through her feelings. If I find out that body image issues, eating disorder issues are not on the list of reasons she's on that couch, I did something right. The fact that she called them, that she called for, if she calls and asks for, makes an appointment for herself, we did something right. I mean, I was, and I've written about this a lot on aspiringmother.com. I had eating disorder issues and body image issues from probably from day one. I used to be jealous, of anorexics. I tried doing that, made it for a while. I say made it like I won a race. But for a while I was, I think through high school, I was 15 when I saw a 20/20 special. And you want to talk about triggers and contagions. There was a special on a woman who had founded an exclusive, last chance clinic for young girls and eating disorders. Like, they'd been kicked out of every other program out there, and people were just waiting for them to wilt away and die. And now, mind you, I can't even remember the first time I hid in my parents' pantry, and basically ate my feelings before I knew what binge eating was. And So I was 15, I think, around 15, and bulimia was brought up, and how this girl went about doing her little her little steps. That was brought up, and I swear to you, 90% of the people who watched that episode probably thought, "Oh, how horrible! What a sad story." That's wow. I saw this and went, "Oh, wow! That I never thought it was a how-to." Yeah, like ding, 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 right? Um, but so that's what I started doing, and it was uh, at least until I was around 21, so 6 years, off and on between, going between the two. Most of the time it was bulimia because I was on, the varsity tennis team, and um, all day tournaments were really not conducive to pulling off anorexia. Which again, I'm not saying it to be facetious. I'm just saying that using that phrasing because I saw myself as a failed anorexic, and even when there was evidence, I may have forgotten to hide. Um, I heard my parents whispering on occasion. Um, I waited to be talked to, and I wasn't, um, because that's not how they were raised to deal with it. A lot of the issues that I think we have as a culture, and as the generation coming up trying to not screw up the generation we're raising, is that we're taught to ignore or pretend the bad isn't there, and if we ignore it long enough, it'll just work itself out. It'll go away. Um, and that's definitely not the case when it comes to mental illness. It's not treated, it's not addressed. It's either going to compound and become more than the single issue it may have been to start with. Or if it is only one issue and happened to, it just happens to, so be depression. It's going to go from I'm too tired, I can't get out of bed, to, it can just escalate to a point where it's too late to help someone because they don't know how to ask for help. How do you, is it, I guess, like, I know going forward, I see a lot of hope with those of us in social media and a lot of my friends in real life, IRL, who, we're more open about this stuff. We talk, this is within the Latino culture and without also. But we are more open. We understand. We are, telling our kids it's okay. That if they need to be in therapy, we're telling our kids, "Mommy has therapy appointments today." Um, we're not sweeping as much shit under the rug, but we're still sweeping some of it. Now, that's progress. But what happens? Are we only looking forward? Do we have any kind of chance of convincing the generation that raised us that is still very much part of our lives, because of how giant the typical Latino nuclear family definition actually is? How do we teach our kids, maybe, okay, you can talk about this in front of this person and this person, but when that tia or that grandparent or that neighbor, from the old neighborhood are around, just don't bring it up because, they're going to say things that are going to hurt your feelings. Not because they're mean and not because they don't love you, but it's just because that's how they were taught to think. You know what I'm saying? How is there any? What do we do about the generation before us and trying to connect with breaking the stigma and keeping the conversation going and not shedding a bad light on breaking the stigma and possibly, you know, making our children clam up again.
Um, that one. I'll just say a few things. I I actually in college I actually had an older gentleman who was one of my professors that I looked up to. He was extreme.
Can you turn your microphone up a little bit?
Oh yeah.
You're off.
Is it on now?
Yeah, you are.
So in college, I had a professor who's extremely intelligent, very well respected, very highly noted scholar in the field that he specialized in. And at the time when I was getting started doing suicide prevention, I was actually starting my thesis work on suicide prevention policy. And I remember that in front of the entire class, he told me, he said, well, you know, Anne, if somebody has already made the plan to take their life, there's nothing you can do to change that. And in that moment,
Filipino fatalistic mindset.
right, but in that moment, I realized that it was, although he had been my professor and had taught me so much, I had an opportunity to educate him, in which I told him, I said, well, actually, that's false. The number one myth about suicide is that that if you talk about it, it'll make people think about it or to follow through with it, and that's actually false. Talking about the issue makes it less likely to occur. And I also noted to him that suicide is not about death or dying. It's about this immense pain that people feel on a constant, it's a 24-hour basis of just constant sadness and darkness and ups and downs that at the end of the day, they feel like that is the only decision that they have to make. And the reality is that with proper diagnosis, with proper treatment, people can live healthy and productive lives. Um, there's actually the noted woman who is one of the main people at the USC law campus who was one of my favorite TED Talks, Ellen Sachs, who actually has and lives with severe schizophrenia. And I tell everyone to look up her TED Talk because it just goes to show that we shouldn't be afraid to talk about this issue, even to those individuals who maybe grew up in a generation where it was seen as something to keep hush hush, because it's our job as a new generation to educate younger generations, older generations. And I can say that in my personal experience in doing suicide prevention trainings and mental health, I can tell you the number of people who have come up to me and told me that they now saw mental health in such a different light that they had never seen before, and that they themselves growing up had always felt this kind of secrecy about talking about mental health. I don't want people to think that I'm crazy, or I don't want to be looked at in this way. So I think that in talking about mental health, we in the mental health community also have to be very cognizant to speak about it in a way that is a way that people can be embraced, because it's not just about saying, oh, you can get therapy and you have to go to this certain place or this certain place. It's about being innovative and thinking out of the box, where if you have a student and you're a therapist, you can meet them, you can go to them to their school. School-based mental health centers are wonderful opportunities to also provide direct services for kids. So I think it's really about us not being afraid to talk about this issue. And the more that we empower young people and educate them to teach the older generations, that's the only way that we're going to be able to change society. Society right now is itself is sick, I guess is the way that you can think about it. Is we have such a high number of suicide rates. The mental health capacity of our nation is really in such a big turmoil that we need to start to kind of plant the seed. And the only way that we're going to do this is, as what you mentioned, is by educating not just the future generation, but also properly educating and changing the mindsets of older generations as well.
Heidi, what do you think? Do you think your son can talk with you about it, ADHD and having a bad day, and if he thinks maybe his medication needs to be tweaked, or things that I can relate to because I've got the same issue. But let's say he can't talk to his cousin about it because his cousin was taught that it's all in your head and it's a bunch of bullshit, or he's got a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle who love him. You don't doubt that. But he let's say he's having a bad weekend and he's supposed to be a family outing. He wants to avoid it because so and so or so and so is going to say something, or you're going to be judged as a bad mom because he's not on his medication to get a break so his brain can reset and not get adjusted to the meds. Right. And you're going to get your ass chewed out because he can't sit still, or he's not thinking before he speaks. How do you explain or how do you deal with that? Because we're still explaining to people that ADHD is not something you outgrow. I got diagnosed at 34. That's just 2 years ago, and ADHD is not something that you're making up. And that there are so many aspects to it that a lot of people don't even realize. So and the suicide rate with for untreated ADHD, I don't know what the numbers are specifically, but I think I'm gonna look it up and see. I'll post it in the Google I'm gonna Google Chimonafa community after. But I mean, you've got your ups and your downs. You've got your depressive stages, and you've got your happy times. How do you handle that with family?
Okay, so it just cut off a little bit for me, but in terms of education and educating older adults, I mean, you mentioned grandparents, and I have my dad. My mom passed away almost 12 years ago, so I haven't had to deal with that issue. With her, I actually told her one day, I was 15 years old, and I said, Mom, I'm depressed. And I was depressed about our home life. My parents would have their arguments. My dad was an alcoholic. My younger brother and I fought constantly. It wasn't, anything. It was very difficult. And when I told her, that I felt I was depressed, she was like, well, you have nothing to be depressed about. And the one you need to help is your dad because he's really depressed. So it completely shut down any conversation. She completely shut it down, and I never brought it up again because I felt like I couldn't trust her. And then with my dad and my son, actually, I've been trying to educate him on what ADHD is and isn't. When he was much younger, he wasn't on medication, he wasn't in treatment, and in fact, I was in denial about it. I thought I could handle his ADHD. I didn't want him on medication. I didn't want him labeled. And even though the teachers started seeing it from the time he was 6 years old, in first and second grade, I waited until fourth grade to get an assessment done and everything. So I had to deal with my own issues on top of the fact of my own guilt of feeling like, oh my gosh, there's something going on with my kid. And maybe I did something wrong, and look, I waited so long to deal with it. And then I have my dad in the background telling me how, my kid, there's something wrong with my kid, and you're not parenting the right way, you're not hitting him enough, because that was the problem solver. You have a kid with a problem, it was the belt. So one of the things I've been doing with my dad over the course of the last several years is educating him and telling him, look, he's taking medication for this reason. He's taking it because he can't sit still, because he has a difficult time sitting still. He has a difficult time focusing. He doesn't hear a lot of, it goes in one ear, not the other. And just telling him what ADHD is and isn't. Another thing is really sticking up for my kid in front of my kid.
Yes.
One of the things that having my son did for me was making me more assertive. Because I was this very anxious, easily intimidated person because of my family life. Everybody had these big personalities and I didn't. It was very difficult for me to voice my opinion without having my heart in my throat and being so scared. So, to my shock and surprise, I had a child and that completely changed. It took a while for me to find my voice and be comfortable with my voice, but definitely having to stick up for my child and say, look, papi, let me tell you something. I was about to speak it completely in Spanish. But I was like, papi, let me tell you something, okay? He's a good kid. He's not malcriado. He's not being raised badly because that's what the word means, malcriado. I'm not doing anything wrong by him. I'm trying to help my son. I'm not trying to do things the way you did them. And I tried doing it in a roundabout way, not so direct when it comes to that, but when he's overtly criticizing my son and saying, no, he did this wrong, and it doesn't matter, I'm trying to teach him how to give my son credit for when credit is due. One great example of this was there was one day when my son forgot that there was no after school, and usually he goes to this after school program and it's 2 blocks away from my dad's house. So my son calls me and he tells me this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to call your grandfather and you can just go over there. He's going to pick you up. And my dad went and picked him up, and when I finished work and I went to go get my son, my dad was waiting for me with his rant. And he was like, oh, he forgot that he didn't have after school. What is wrong with him? You're not teaching him anything. And I said, well, you know what? He may have forgotten that there was after school, but guess what? He called me and he told me about it. He called, He did the responsible thing. He didn't get up and leave. He didn't go anywhere. He didn't disappear. He did the responsible thing. He picked up the phone. He called me, and then I was able to have you go and get him. No, but he's supposed to remember. I was like, okay, do you remember everything that you're supposed to remember? No, because you're not perfect, right? Okay, then. You need to give him a break. And I think when Andy saw that, and we actually talked about it on the way home, he says, Mom, I can't believe you did that. Because my son really, because of the way my dad is so critical of him, he doesn't really have a relationship with him. We live 10 minutes away and we see each other. They say hello, and my dad checks on him with school and stuff, but they don't have the kind of relationship where my son can say, I trust my grandpa. The same way I said as a kid, I don't trust my dad. But when I talked with Andy, and he said, Mom, I can't believe you did that. Why did you do that? Because he didn't like to see us argue. I said, well, he has to know that, Andy, you did the right thing. You forgot. Everybody forgets. Everybody makes mistakes. But you did the right thing by calling me. That's how you and I roll. That's how you and I do things, right? He was like, yeah. I'm like, okay, then. Grandpa's going to say what he's going to say. We can't control what other people do. We can only control what we do. And whenever my son makes a right choice, he makes the right decision, I support him on it. And I think that, that's something that I try and show other parents. And I don't, when I go to work, I don't talk about my family life. I keep that very, close to myself. I don't talk about my family life, but I do say, well, there's a parent that I know, there's a mother that I know, and she does this and she does that. And in that way, I can share some of my own personal stuff without getting too personal. But I can teach parents on really how to have that open communication with their kids, so that when their kids say, Mom, I'm tired, the mom is not trying to get them to do stuff that they don't want them to do if they're so exhausted that they're going to explode and then get punished.
Right.
And with older adults, that's with the parents of now, but with older adults like my dad, there was another statistic that I saw that really interested me. It made sense, and but it interested me that many of many people, many adults that want to look for mental health services, they go to their medical doctor or they go to their clergy. They go to their priest, minister, rabbi. That's who they go to,
Yep.
especially in the Latino community, MD or clergy, because of course they're the professionals that we trust. You know, right now, social workers, therapists, they're not people that they can say, "Oh, I trust them."
Because they're not people. It's the across the board. It's a social class thing. You know,
Exactly.
you wear a white coat. You're in a blue uniform.
Exactly.
You're whether or not they're right. They're right because
Exactly.
they're the experts. So
Right. So one of the things that I do, like, you know, one of the things that I struggle with my family is them accepting that I'm even a therapist. They don't,
awesome. Can
you
you
know,
let
my
me
dad.
how I gotta tell people I'm a writer.
So one of the things that I think we could do is actually do more work on educating doctors and clergy on mental health issues and how to say, okay, there are some doctors that are great that they will say, listen, I think I want to refer you to this place and say, you know, and talk to this person. That's what happened to me when I was pregnant. That's how I got into this whole thing.
Hmm.
Was that when I was 6 months pregnant with Andy, my my OBGYN said, you know, I burst into tears and she sent me.
You still there? Or you freeze up? Did she freeze up for everybody else?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. If you we're gonna get ready to wrap up because I was watching the time and I know we started about 20 minutes late, so I was trying to make up for that when we edit
Do
down
this.
for the podcast that we had about an hour's worth of material. Sorry, Heidi, you froze up for a minute, so I wasn't. We were waiting for you to come back. But
It's
I
okay.
wanted to get everybody. We can all go through one more time final points because I wanted to
Mhm.
start wrapping up. And I want to, if you have, Anna, you mentioned suicide warnings and resources. If there's like references you can point people to, we've been posting them in the group chat area, and then I can then take the information and put it into a blog post on Aspirant or a newsletter, and we can put it in a in the community chat, the community on Google Plus, so people can refer. Know where to go. It's one thing that I know with talking about mental health issues. You're not really doing much good if you're talking about it and you leave the table without having answered where you can get the help.
Mhm.
So, Heidi, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the resources that I have, I actually don't have this number listed, but it's the National Suicide Hotline, and it's something that anybody can Google, but that's something that a lot of people have been sharing in light of what has happened with Robin Williams. There's another new initiative here in New York City that I learned about as well. Was a texting program where teens can text when they need help. We also, as a clinic, my clinic has the only mobile crisis team in New York City. And what we do is that when we get a call within our catchment area, which is where we provide services, we go out to the home, we do a mental health assessment, and we do a suicide assessment. We check for all of that so that we can see how we can help the family and possibly connect them to services. So that actually is just here in New York, and again, ours is the only one that's set up for kids and teens. There's a lot of crisis response teams, but they're for adults.
Okay.
And you can call 1-800-LifeNet in New York City, and that's the number that you can call to get services in general, but that one is how we get connected and how we get that call. So I think that that's definitely some information that we can share. But that's 1-800-LIFE-NET for services in New York City.
Okay. And where do you have a blog right now, Heidi?
I do have a blog. It's over at I have my personal blog, HeidiZalamar.com, and up until recently I was working with healthyplace.com, and they have blogs on different things. My blog was about parenting a child with mental illness while also being a professional in the field. So I wrote about a lot of my adventures with my son while also writing posts educating parents on how to deal with different situations, how to go to school and talk to teachers and different things like that. And that's healthyplace.com is a great website. They have blogs on all different mental illnesses and give a lot of advice and resources and information.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for putting up with the that started off as a giant cluster beep. Really, well, next time we'll be a little more organized sooner when we have you on. Because I do want to have you back for any topics, which
Sure.
I might not want to play doctor on TV for.
Okay.
So there you go.
I'd love to
and
come back.
Anya, what about you? Where can people find you online? Any resources or information you want to share? And thank you.
Sure. So just thank you so much, Polly, for letting me come to your first Google chat, and thanks to everyone. I think this is a wonderful conversation. I just wanted to share the National Crisis Hotline number, which is 1-800-273-TALK.
1-800-273-TALK. Awesome.
1-800-273-TALK. This is the National Crisis Hotline number. So what it will do is it's a 24-hour chat line, talk line, confidential. It'll route you to the closest crisis center that's in your area, and so that's probably if you don't know where to call if you're not in New York, then the National Crisis Hotline number is really great. And also, I think that the word that I would like to leave with everyone is that if you're thinking about a career to go into, especially if you're young and you're looking at going into school, really start looking and thinking about going into the field of behavioral health and to be someone like Heidi, who's a licensed therapist, or doing suicide prevention trainings, or reaching out to people, because our workforce in our nation is just really, really low, and so we need a lot of really good people out there to provide these services. Well, why not let that be you? As they say, change starts with us, and so I think it's really important for us to continue this dialogue and not just kind of bring it, talk about it when tragedies occur. It's something that we have to remember to talk about every single day and know that it's okay to ask for help. Never be ashamed or embarrassed to ask for help. And whenever you do need help, talk to a family member, a friend, someone that you trust, a clergy member, as Heidi was saying, or to your medical doctor, or call the National Crisis Hotline number. But whatever you do, know that it does get better, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Never feel that you're alone in this world, because all of us that are here on this chat, even if we may not know you or have met you directly, we all care, and that's why we're here today talking about this. So again, the National Crisis Hotline number, 1-800-273-TALK.
1-800-273-TALK. So, and anybody who thinks that nobody else in the world can possibly feel as sad as they're feeling, or can know what it's like to feel that way, there are plenty of people who also feel the same way. The problem is most of us aren't saying anything. So it's kind of a party of one, even though there's so many affected. We're going to wrap it up for the first one, and thank God that we actually got this going. My husband's going to have a blast with this one when I say it's time to convert it. But I'm Pauline Campos. I'm Latina Magazine's advice columnist at Imola column for lighthearted and or anything that might not be lighthearted questions. love, sex, relationships, family issues. Send them my way at bimolo@latina.com. I'm online at aspiringmama.com. And Chingona Fest, we're working on building the community because I think there needs to be one, and I think Anna and Heidi are prime examples of why we need to make sure we keep on talking to each other and with each other and helping each other out, because sometimes it takes a bitch to change things. And, you know, like I said, when I say bitch, when I say chingona, I mean the kind that you mean as a compliment. So, thank you, everybody, and I'll keep you posted when we get it online, and hoping to do this again next week for a different topic. And I'd like to have you both back, so we'll make sure that we keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Have a good one. All right, everybody. I'm logging off, and if you happen to be watching this on YouTube later and are completely amused by the circus show that this started out as, this is usually how it goes. So have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.